Okay, I would like to remind you that right now we have about 103 viewers on YouTube and 313 on Zoom, which is total 416 viewers right now. Ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to listen to the welcome speech by the director of NIPA School of Administration, Jakarta. Please welcome Professor Dr. Nurullah Nurdin, MA. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. May peace be upon you. My humble respect for the head of National Institute of Public Administration, Dr. Adi Suryanto, MSI. Thank you for delighting this conference. And our respectable speakers and partners, Professor Dr. Agus Pramusinto, Head of Indonesia Civil Service Commission, KSN, Professor Alex Brilliantes, the Secretary General of Europe, and professors from University of the Philippines. Professor Dr. Ahmad Martada, the Head of Governance and Integrity Clusters, School of Government, College of Law Government, International Studies, University Utara, Malaysia. Dr. Yong Hoon An, Professor and Chief Director of the Public Policy Future Institute from Hensei University, Seoul, South Korea. And Mrs. Nabukera Madina, PhD, as the Director of a Female Campus Islamic University of Uganda, and all audience. Praise be to Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. For him we are blessed to attend this peaceful international conference. Dear speakers, ladies and gentlemen, a pandemic of COVID-19 has been disruption various sectors of human life. There is a shift in the mechanism of public service, governance, economic activity, and business process. To accelerate the adoption of technology, so we can survive in the order of the normal era. Governance is on the social dynamic of the continue to flare up. The government after the pandemic comes into a discourse that needs a depth studies to develop a transformation strategy toward a new era of post-pandemic. As a form of seriousness in preparing the strategy towards the governance of the new post-pandemic, the NIPA School of Public Administration Jakarta, together with the Indonesian Association for Public Administration, IAPA, invites all academics, professionals, practitioners, researchers, and the general public to be actively involved in these international discussions. We are very pleased to talk about how this pandemic can make governance transformation dynamic society like inclusivity, accountability, sustainability, and digitalization. My dear speakers and audience, our current situation is unpredictable, disruptive, and challenging as well. As we have seen over the past year, we manage how to adapt and work within this pandemic. Recognizing the challenge we face, government bureaucracy must respond decisively, innovatively to address the devastation that COVID-19 has causing in all sectors and regions. We are already seeing the devastating impact our nations experience. We realize that governments around the world are struggling to find the most effective responses and make some changes after this pandemic. I do believe that South Korea, Philippines, Malaysia, Uganda have the same issues. Dear speakers, ladies and gentlemen, this event was attended by around 200 participants who came from within and outside the country, from the various scientific backgrounds in a Zoom webinar. This doesn't include those attending the plenary session, which is broadcast through our YouTube channels. Through this event, we hope to add our contribution to science, especially in these times of disruptions. The third International Conference on Governance, Public Administration, and Social Science is expected to be a forum that gives birth to the ideas and innovative solutions to face the challenges in the governance of the post-pandemic. The academic practitioners may also help the governments in the gaining solutions through collaborative research, while at the same time, the government keep innovating to be an agile bureaucracy in the era of uncertainty. Ladies and gentlemen, without lingering any longer, I officially led the conference of the Third International Conference on Governance, Public Administration, and Social Science begin. Please welcome our speakers. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce our second speaker. He is Professor Alex Brillantes Jr. He is Filipino political scientist and expert of local governance and development administration. He is a professor at the National College of Public Administration and Governance, University of the Philippines, and also a Secretary General of Eastern Regional Organization for Public Administration, or EROPA. Professor Brillantes has a PhD and MA in Political Science from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and Master in Public Administration and AB in Political Science from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. He was the Dean of the University of the Philippines and Executive Director of the Local Government Academy. He is also currently a member of the Board of Trustees at the Galing Puk Foundation and Local Government Development Foundation. His expertise and research areas are anti-corruption, comparative public administration, decentralization, development and underdevelopment, and governance of institutions and development. For the next 15 minutes, Professor Alex will be sharing with us. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Alex Brillantes Jr.
Thank you very much. Terima kasih banyak. I'm very happy to be a privilege to be part of this very, very important conference. And I will begin now by sharing my screen. Thank you very much, dear friends, and my respects to all of you around the table, especially, of course, to the participants in this very, very important conference. Can you see my screen? Okay. Can you see? Okay, thank you. Terima kasih. First and foremost, again, thank you, Dr. Nurlia, and of course to Professor Dr. Agus Pomusinto, and to all of you, dear friends from IAPA and of course from NIPA. Thank you very much. As we say in the Philippines, maraming salamat. And I know salamat is also a word in Bahasa. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I guess what I will do, dear friends, is to take off from the theme that you identifying 4 areas, if you may, of governance under the pandemic. And when we talk about this, we talk about the importance of inclusivity, accountability, sustainability, and digitalization. We all know that these are also the fundamental principles of governance, but as I will say earlier, these fundamentals of principles of governance have indeed evolved through time. What I will do, dear friends, is to discuss it within the context of COVID, within the context of, hey, we've had COVID for almost 2 years now, almost 2 years, and how have these principles worked out? But more importantly, how have the different, maybe countries in the world, I'll choose 4 countries, taking off from a conference that we just had at the Asian Association for Public Administration, how have some of us responded to the pandemic? And what are the lessons learned? Not all of us responded the same way, as pointed out by our previous speaker, Dr. Adri. But you know what? All of us have different kinds of responses. And the whole question is putting the discipline. We are all in public administration, putting the discipline of public administration into question. Or is public administration still relevant? Are we able to cope with the challenges, or should we change? Should we be more agile, as Dr. Adri mentioned? Should we be able to somehow adjust, which is, I think, the value of public administration. It should be dynamic, because if it's not dynamic, it will become irrelevant and perhaps will become useless in the future. But hey, that's not the idea. Public administration has to respond. Okay. So among the key messages in relation to our theme today is really there are many aspects of the COVID-19 crisis. An old theme in public administration, we call it a wicked problem. It's not simple. So many uncertainties. People talk about the VUCA. All of you, I'm sure, have heard about VUCA, but we'll talk about so many uncertainties, and data limitations. That's why it's very nice that in our theme today, we talk about the importance of digitalization. Some talk digitization, then digitalization 4.0, if you may. And as in many common problems, the response are mixed, different tools. Question, are there enough tools? Question, were we ready for it? And finally, I read this book a long time ago, but it's a nice framework. Lynn Blom talked about the science of muddling through. The science of muddling through. It's like an oxymoron. You muddle through because there's not information, but it says it's a science. When you talk about science, it is predictable. So it's almost an oxymoron. Okay. So just to mention, like I said, in line with our theme, we talk about the importance of leadership. Professor Adri already mentioned about the importance of leadership, and I was so happy to see the picture of President Widodo. The importance of communication, the role of government, national, local, and national, local. Are they coordinating? Then our speaker last time, his name is Ali Farasman, some of you must have known, talk about the importance of crisismanship. Then the expanding role of government. Should it expand or should it contract? But of course, we talk about the importance of it expanding. The imperatives of competent government. I love the presentation of Dr. Agus also earlier, who talked about the importance of competence. What kind of competences are needed at this time No, that's why I guess Farasman Ali would call it crisismanship, and the importance of digitalization, social capital that hasn't been given that much attention. But at the end of the day, our communities matter. Government can be there, but if government does not respond, the people themselves, resilience. And I know Indonesia, you have Gotong Royong, I think, right? And the Philippines, Bayanihan, I'll talk about that later on. The community resilience, and of course, how do we live with COVID? COVID is here to stay. Question, how does public administration, institutions, processes, and even our discipline, the way we do researches, how do we live with COVID at this point in time? Okay, so as I said earlier, the discourse of good governance, it is not new. No, we talked about before transparency, accountability, participation in the 90s, and then before the COVID, the United Nations boiled this down to three: effectiveness, accountability, inclusiveness, including those that have been sub principles, if you may: competence, sound policy making, integrity. Point three aspects: effectiveness, accountability, and okay, and then it has brought many of these principles to test. As I said earlier, hey, it's very important that from VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, PA, public administration should not focus on that, but perhaps we should focus on VUCA, but providing the vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. Dr. Adri mentioned agility. So in one sense, maybe PA, our discipline, should be able to be more quote-unquote positive. Sure, you have a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, but maybe us, to be relevant, we should provide a vision, help to understand why, make it clarity, and be agile, be flexible. So taking off from the recent AAPA conference, we have several speakers, and I will not talk much about this, but really all of them talked about the importance of opportunities, leadership. Pan Soo Kim of Korea, a colleague of ours, so Sofyan Sahrawi talk about we seize the opportunity or we become redundant. It is a danger. Or Guy Peters talk about the implications of bureaucratic autonomy, how autonomous are the bureaucracy. And Alan Rosenbaum, the president of the American Association, talk about the importance of a decentralized system, resiliency, and equally important, Ali Farasman talk about the importance of professionalism, meriticism, and he talk about crisismanship. Point, dear friends, the pandemic has come, various changes, various responses of public administration, various non-responses of public administration. Are we going to be relevant? I think it's very important. And this survey was done by Capano et al. 2020, he talked about how China, Italy, Singapore, etc. What has come out? Social values, policy design, capacity, past experiences, federalism, social values, and authoritarianism. In other words, different countries in the world had different responses. Okay? But the importance, even of, for us in public administration, national, local relations. The importance, authoritarianism, the importance of local relation, the importance of working with each other. Our other friend, his name is Evan Berman, whom I'm sure you know, talked about the importance of leadership, the importance of, hey, that's our theme today, digitalization, the response of local governments as frontliners, and citizens' trust. My point, dear friends, is different governments have responded. And what shall we do after this? What I will do in the next slides, very quickly, I know about 5 more minutes, will be to talk about specific countries, very quickly. But the importance is that it should be dynamic, improving the healthcare, reducing inequality. I think it's very, very important because under the pandemic, those who have been hit most are the poor people. For whom is public administration? Those who have been hit most are the poor people. Please let me know how many more minutes I have. Okay. So very quickly, I'm citing some of our young scholars. They're very, very good. Professor Reza talked about in Indonesia, the government as facilitator, the importance of social cash transfer for the poor. It was done in Indonesia. Okay. And then he talked about the importance of multi-level governance and assistance, again, as I said earlier, to the poor and vulnerable. Point, dear friends, we're now very quickly talking about the experience of some countries. And we Hari Fatin and Aprilianti also discussed. I'm citing these very bright young scholars in the last conference. Vietnam talked about the importance of local governments, again, local authorities, frontlines, including decisions implemented by the central government in Ho Chi Minh and in Da Nang. The role, remember our theme, national-local relations. Thailand, I think the same. They talk about a single commander, but they had a nice case called the Phuket Sandbox where they created an island bubble in order to bring in more tourists. It wasn't so successful, they said, but hey, it was okay. And a good friend of ours, sorry, how many more minutes?
Give me 4 minutes remaining.
Okay, thank you. Terima kasih. So Thailand talk about community resilience, centralized leadership, and collaboration. What I will do, well, the Philippines, similar collaboration, governance, and leadership. What I will do, dear friends, is PA responses have been different. Social capital, importance. So I think this is another dimension that wasn't given that much importance in the studies. Let's look at social capital. Gotong royong, bayanihan. The poor have been hardest. Not much research has been done about this, apart from the traditional areas of leadership, national-local relations, community resilience. We have to do more research in that, at least for us, in the post-pandemic. So what were the success factors? We talked about that. Quick and timely response, science-based digitalization, intergovernmental cooperation, and leadership. Point, dear friends, is we should not lose sight of this, including, of course, the so-called sustainable development goals that really continues to frame the discourse. And Adriana Alberti talked about the importance of Agenda 2030. And what I'm saying, dear friends, is the pandemic has hit us, different responses, but I think we should not forget about the SDGs and how can we align our responses to the SDGs, the immediate problem, but of course the long-term, the longer goal is the SDGs by 2030. Okay, so revisiting our key messages, there are so many problems. It's a wicked problem. The importance of, you talk about this in your theme, accountability, digitalization, data, but accurate data, sustainability, and of course, it could be within the context of muddling through. And as I said earlier, traditionally, you have these areas of leadership, communication, role of government, that's fine. But for us, I think we should do more research in terms of community resilience, in terms of how the poor have really been on their own, responded to this, including innovations at the local level. So let's not lose sight of the SDGs, but learn from what we have done within the context of our theme, inclusivity, accountability, sustainability, and digitalization for a public administration that responds to vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. Vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. Terima kasih banyak. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Alex Brillantes, for your insight.